Hello, everybody. I'm Elliot Lefkowitz, and I'm the data secretary for the International Committee on Taxonomy of Viruses, the ICTV. And today we're going to be talking about ICTV resources, what we do, how we do it, and how we present the data to the scientific community. And this is one in a series of webinars, I hope, that will explore more specific issues in the future. But this particular webinar today is going to give a general overview of the ICTV and a general overview of the resources that we provide that allow you to look at ICTV data and to download our information. There is a email address down at the bottom of the screen you'll see here, info@ictv.global, and that email address can accept emails from anybody. And if you send your recommendations in for future webinars or anything else or questions that you might have, we'd be happy to answer them. Okay, so today I'm giving this welcome, and then I'm going to hand it off to Murillo Zerbini, who will talk about the ICTV in general and give you an overview of what we do. Then I'm going to start off talking about virus taxonomy and how that taxonomy is generated. Stuart Seidel is on tap to talk about some of the resources that we have and nomenclature. Stuart's having a little bit of a problem logging in. If he's not available, then I'll go ahead and talk about those resources. We'll talk about the ICTV report from Donald Smith, and then move on to the website itself. And on the website, we'll have some of the people who helped me develop the resources that you see. Don Dempsey and Curtis Hendrickson talk about those resources. Steve Powell and my group will be giving us the overview of the website. Then we'll talk about some of the things that we have available for future applications that you'll be seeing. And then finally, we'll end with a Q&A questions feature. So here's the list of speakers. I will be posting this presentation on the website. The agenda for today is also posted on the website. And so you have the affiliations and such of everybody who's participating and their role in the ICTV. Now, what we're doing now is made possible through an NIH grant. The U.S. National Institute of Allergies and Infectious Diseases has awarded a grant through their knowledge base program to us to further develop the website and develop some of the resources that we have for displaying ICTV information. And so that grant, Virus Taxonomy, a community knowledge base supporting virus research, allows us to put this on. In addition to doing things such as the website and other outreach, this grant's enabling us to improve the back-end infrastructure, all of the IT equipment and facilities that allow us to provide the website. And then it allows us to enhance the information on the website, as well as the tools that are used to display the taxonomy and various other added value information that we display on top of the taxonomy. So what I want to do now is give it to Murillo and allow Murillo now to talk about a general overview of the ICTV. Murillo, if you unmute, then there you go.
Thank you, Elliot. I see you have my first slide, but should I share my own screen here?
You can share if you'd like, but I do have your slides on board as well.
Probably easier if you pass them on for me then. All right.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for organizing this webinar, and I want to welcome everybody. It's great to see such a large attendance, such a large group of people interested in the ICTV. I want to just quickly warn you that I'm in Brazil, as Elliot mentioned, and right now there's a big storm brewing outside my window. And these big storms here are usually followed by power outs. So if all of a sudden I disappear from your screens, you know what happened. And Elliot has my presentation, he can finish for me, but let's hope that it's a quick presentation. I don't intend to go over 10 minutes. So hopefully this storm will not start before that, but these things develop pretty quickly here. So anyway, my purpose here today is to give you a quick introduction about what is the ICTV, how is it organized, and basically what's our mission, what do we do. About how we do it will be the topic of the other talks. The next one, Elliot, please. All right, so the ICTV was born in 1966 as the International Committee on Nomenclature of Viruses. The name was changed 7 years later to International Committee on Taxonomy of Viruses. We are a committee of the Virology Division of the International Union of Microbiology Societies. Okay, so we exist under this umbrella of organizations. And every time I talk about the ICTV, I like to quote this phrase from Frank Fenner, a great virologist, past president of the ICTV. Taxonomy lies at the uneasy interface between biology and logic, and the process of information follows different rules in these systems, and we try to reconcile them as tightly as possible. I think it's a beautiful sentence, captures very nicely what we try to do. The next one, please. All right, so the ICTV has the following objectives. Number one, and this is in our statutes, to develop an internationally agreed taxonomy for viruses. Number two, to establish the internationally agreed names for virus tags. I'm going to come back to this in a minute. Number three, to communicate the decisions reached concerning classification and nomenclature. This webinar is part of this, okay? Of course, here we're not communicating decisions, we're trying to explain how we do things. And this objective three over the years, it morphed into more than just communicating decisions. We also do a lot of community outreach and give talks and participate in various meetings explaining how the ICTV works. And number four, to maintain an index of virus names and taxa will be the topic of another talk here today. All right. So quick comment here, a lot of people don't realize that, but I think it's important to mention that in all other taxonomies for animals, plants, fungi, and prokaryotes, the corresponding committees, they deal only with nomenclature. They don't actually decide on classification. Classification is usually agreed upon or maybe disagreed upon based on the published literature. It's a very complicated process, and I think a big part of the reason why virus taxonomy is in a better state these days compared to the other taxonomies is because there is a committee that deals with classification. Okay, that's my opinion at least. So in virus taxonomy, the ICTV is responsible for both classification and nomenclature. And as a previous slide that Elliot showed, taxonomy equals classification plus nomenclatures, simplified form. All right, so this is the current structure of the ICTV. This has only slightly changed since 1966. It's basically the same structure. We have an executive committee. This EC has president, vice president, 3 secretaries, 7 subcommittee chairs, and 11 elected members. Most of us are on 3-year terms. There's a few people who are on slightly different terms, but most of us are on 3-year terms. And I like always to point out that the executive committee is very diverse in terms of geography. You have people from 15 countries, so that we have a good degree of geographical diversity. And each subcommittee, there are 7 of them, has a number of study groups that are associated with them. You can see here, the number varies from 11 to 22, depending on the subcommittee. Each study group has a chair and a number of members. Some study groups are very small. They have only 4 or 5 members. Some are larger, like with 15 or 20 members. So on average, 10 members from each study group. And then we have a number of life members. Most of them are past presidents of the ICTV. And we have a number of national representatives from national virology societies, currently 42. I just checked this number last night. So overall, there's about 180 ICTV members, including study group chairs and all the life members and national representatives. All right. All right. Well, we organize annual meetings of the executive committee every year, usually on the Northern Hemisphere summer, July, August. These meetings are in person. Of course, they were online during the pandemic, but they're back to in person now. And they're very short in terms of length, usually they last 2 or 3 days, but very intense with a very large number of taxonomy proposals that are discussed and decided upon, either approved, asked for revisions, or rejected. You can see the numbers here. On average, 200 proposals are discussed at every EC meeting. With some of them are very simple. They just deal with creating a new species in a very well-established genus of a very well-established family. There's not much to discuss, but some of them are dealing with major issues like the recent binomial nomenclature for various species, which has consumed most of our last 3 years. So this year's the 2024 meeting is scheduled to take place in Italy on July 31st. Next one, please. We have a very well-established and systematic decision-making process, which runs on a yearly cycle. And I think Elliot's going to come back to this in more detail during his presentation. So I'm just showing this here just to point out that the procedure is very well established. Some people complain that it's too slow. Other people complain that it's too fast. It's hard to reconcile the different views. Over the years, I've become very happy with this current process. I think it works well. There's a lot of checkpoints, and that's very important that we have these checkpoints to make sure that when we get to the official taxonomy, there aren't that many mistakes, or at least there are no major mistakes, just sometimes minor things that we need to correct. But it has been working well over the last years. And as I said, Elliot's going to go over this in more detail. Next one, I'm almost finished. As I said, part of our objectives is to publicize our decisions. We do this by a variety of ways, but every year we publish a paper in the Virology Division News section of Archives of Virology, summarizing the changes of the previous year. That's the one you see here on the top left. This is last year's. Different subcommittees or study groups sometimes published Virology Division News articles as well to inform the community about recent decisions that they have made. And we also publish general interest papers in other journals whenever we feel there's some major thing that needs to be informed, that needs to be communicated, like when we expanded the taxonomic framework from 5 to 15 ranks, or just general articles explaining how we work. So you can follow this through the literature. Okay. Next one, in our website, which will be detailed also later, you can find our statutes which define how the ICTV works, the composition, how we held our elections, and everything. So the minutiae on the functioning of the ICTV. And next one, please, and the code, the International Code of Virus Classification and Nomenclature, which details the way in which the taxonomy framework is arranged and how the different taxa are organized. You can also find this in our website. And finally, Elliot, I think my next final slide, I would like to acknowledge our sponsors, people who have funded the ICTV over the years. We're primarily funded by the IUMS, of course. We're a virology committee of the IUMS. We were fortunate to have a Wellcome Trust grant a few years ago. This grant's now expired, but it helped to put in place much of the structure that we will see today. And we're also very thankful to a number of national virology societies that have supported us. The ASV has been the major one with consistent support over the years. But we also have had support of the Australasian Virology Society, the French, Finnish, and Italian societies. And finally, I want to point out the Microbiology Society of the UK, which currently funds the position of the report managing editors. We also publish the ICTV profiles, which I did not mention in my previous slide because they will be a topic of a further talk as well. So Thank you to all these organizations. Thank you all for your presence. And that's it. Thank you, Elliot. Back to you now.
All right. Thank you, Murillo. I'm just going to end the show just for a minute here. One of the things I want to do before we get too far is to actually show the website. So let me. All right. And now what happened? Ah, there we go. Okay. So this is the ICTV website. We'll be taking a pretty good tour through the website over the course of the webinar today. And there we go. All right. We'll be taking a tour of the website over the course of the webinar today. And I'm going to let Steve Powell in a few minutes talk about the layout of the website and talk about the menu structure and such. But right now, what I'm going to do is move on and talk about the virus taxonomy itself. That is, where does it come from and what are the resources that we provide in order to communicate that taxonomy to scientists around the world and to anybody interested in the taxonomy itself. So I'm going to go back and start the, here we go, start the slideshow again. All right. So how do we produce the taxonomy? Who does it? And how does it get done? So in order to create the taxonomy, there's a process that we use in order to prepare proposals and then have those proposals reviewed. So who does that? So as Murillo showed you, the ICTV is made up of a series of subcommittees. Every virus family belongs to one of these subcommittees, and those are differentiated on the website. And I'll show you in a little bit how you access the information on what virus families belong to each subcommittee. In essence, each family corresponds to a particular study group. And the study groups are composed of a chair and then several members. The number of members varies for each study group, but every family, for the most part, has a study group associated with it. And so it's this group of people that are responsible for the bulk of the preparation of proposals. But as you'll see, actually anyone can create a proposal to create a new virus taxa, generally starting with the people who actually discovered the virus. And once the people prepare a proposal, then it goes into the ICTV process of vetting that proposal. So the proposal is prepared, it's submitted to the subcommittee chair, and the subcommittee chair will then pass it on to the appropriate study group that reviews the proposal. And then, as Murillo indicated, we have this process whereby all of those proposals are reviewed by the executive committee during their meeting, generally in the summer or early fall of each year. And then once those are approved by the executive committee, then there's a ratification process for the ICTV membership that's composed of the executive committee, study group chairs, national members, and life members. And that ratification process happens in the spring. We expect the ratification process for the forthcoming release of the new ICTV taxonomy to take place within the next week or two or so. We're just about ready to have that happen. So I talked about proposals a good bit. So what I thought I'd do is quickly show you what the proposals are. So let me stop sharing this screen here. And now let's come back and bring up one of the proposals. So if you look at the proposals themselves, what you see here are a Word document and an Excel spreadsheet. The Word document provides the justification for defining a new taxon or making alterations to existing taxa. And then the Excel spreadsheet provides exactly what's going to happen how that taxon is going to appear in what we call the master species list that I'll refer to later. But as I said, the Word document here provides the justification. It provides the individuals who are responsible for putting together that particular proposal. It talks about the study group that's reviewed that proposal and what they do in order to approve it or suggest changes, perhaps. And then you have the justification, which frequently includes information on what we call the demarcation criteria, the criteria that are used that determine whether or not, for that particular family of viruses, a newly isolated virus is a member of an existing species, or perhaps a new species, or even a new genera or family or whatever. So you'll see that justification in these proposals, and you'll see it in the form of, in this case, a phylogenetic tree. And so demarcation criteria are defined for every different family of viruses and even individual genera within the families. And you can find those demarcation criteria, that is, the criteria that determine what viruses belong where, in the ICTV reports. And Donald Smith may refer to those briefly when he talks about the ICTV reports. Okay, as I said, the Excel spreadsheet is key to taking the proposed criteria and adding them to the master species list, or the database of all taxonomy. This is just an example of the taxonomy proposal spreadsheet that was prepared for this year, one for pox viruses. And we see here, we have two rows here, row number 5, and then row number 6. Row number 6 has an existing current taxonomy. So that means that action is going to do something to that current taxonomy. Row number 5 is blank for the current taxonomy. So that's probably going to propose something new. And then as we scroll across, we see for the proposed, the new taxonomy. So row number 5 here is proposing the creation of a new genus. We scroll back, we see that genus is called Epsilon entomopox virus. And then we have an existing species. We see here in current taxonomy the name of the existing species, and that then is moved into the new species. So it's the Excel spreadsheet that provides all of this specific information that makes its way into our taxonomy database and eventually makes its way into the master species list. Okay, so let's now go to the master species list. Now, I am briefly going to go back to the website right now because I want to show you where all of this information is available. If I can find amongst all of these windows here where the Google Chrome is, that shows me the master species list. Here we go. Okay, so we're on the website here. The proposal template files are available here. From this drop down, these are the files that anyone can use to write up a proposal. If you're interested in looking at the proposals for already approved proposals, they're here under the approved proposal list, and you can click on any one of these subcommittees as they're divided up, and then you'll see the proposals that have been approved for any particular release here. And this will allow you to download both the Word document and Excel document for the proposals. But I keep mentioning this master species list. So what is it? So the master species list is available from the taxonomy menu here. The master species list provides the complete set of taxa that represent the official ICTV taxonomy at any one point in time. And we have a history of the taxonomy in the master species list going back to 2005. So you can download the taxonomy as it was back in 2005 by clicking on this link here. We actually, as you'll see later through our taxonomy browser, give you the ability of accessing the very first taxonomy that was published in 1971 from our taxonomy browser. But if you click here, you can now download the latest master species list. And the master species list then is another Excel spreadsheet that is available right here. So here's the master species list, and it contains a listing of all of the ranks that are present, the higher level ranks from realm on down to families and genera. and then finally species. And so each row of the master species list contains the complete taxonomic rank structure for every species that's recognized at this point in time by the ICTV. And then you get a little bit of information about its genome composition and the last change that happened, and the MSL of the last change. That is, in the MSL 36, which was several years ago, this particular species was moved. And if you're interested in what happened in terms of that taxonomic change, you can, one, click on this history URL link, and we'll show that later. You'll get taken to a page that shows the detailed history for that particular species. And you can also bring up and download the proposal that was responsible for the change to, in this case, move that species. Here you see there's several species that were created new in MSL 36 in this case, and you can click on this links here. The master species list is sortable, and so you can sort on any one of these columns and look at information. So if you're interested in what happened in terms of MSL 38, all we have to do is come up and we can sort on that MSL 38 column there, and we can see everything that happened based upon that. So this is showing us actually it's just sorted in reverse order. We'll go all the way down, and now we see all of the changes that happened for MSL 38 here. So the master species list is really key to giving you information on the current taxonomy of the ICTV. But we also have this available in several different ways that you'll see in just a little bit. Okay, so that's how we present the taxonomy. Now, as I talked about, the taxonomy is generated by the study groups. And once you create a new taxa, you define the name of the taxa itself, which may be the name of the species, and the name of higher ranks, whether they be genera, families, or orders on up to the rank of realm. So where do all of these names come from? And so the names come from the proposals, and the proposals are what the particular study groups define those names to be. And if you look at the different proposals, those proposals will show you, sorry, that's not what I want to display there. The individual proposals will talk about where all these names come from. That is the etymology of each one of these names. Let me start the slideshow again. Okay. Sorry, I need to stop the slideshow to get it to work properly. Just a second here. Stop it and then restart it. There we go. No, not quite there yet. Here, right, let's do this. Here we go. All right. So now you should be seeing my slides again. Come down to nomenclature and etymology. Good. All right. So where do all these names come from? So the names come from the proposals, as I indicated. And if you click on the website on this button, the etymology of names here, Stuart Seidel has put together information on the etymology of the names of all higher ranks. So let's just go back to the website. Whatever it may be here. And if we go to taxonomy here and we go to taxon name etymology, this will take us to a listing of all of the etymology, the etymology of any name that you want. So if we're interested, for example, of names of pox viruses, I can click on this here and I can publish it here. Now, this shows us names of all names in the Vera DNA Viria realm. And so if we display them all, then I could search for pox virus here. And now we have names here, for example, of the Poxviridae, the family itself. And so you see here that Poxviridae, that name was originally defined in the first ICTV report. There's a reference for that name here, a published reference, and then the etymology itself from the Old English pox, meaning pustule, referring to disease, pox. And so that's available for all of these. So that shows you where all of these names come from. Okay, so now I'm going to stop sharing. And that shows you basically where the names came from. And now I showed you the master species list, and I showed you that it contained the complete taxonomic hierarchy for every species that's defined by the ICTV. But one could imagine that there's a lot of other information that you'd like to have about that particular species. What the master species list doesn't do is show you anything about the viruses that belong to that particular species. So in order to rectify that, on the website, we provide a link to a spreadsheet called the virus metadata resource, the VMR, that allows you to get additional information. And so if we go back to the taxonomy link here, and we go down to the virus metadata resource, you can download the VMR here from any one of these links. We have them going back here to MSL 31. And the virus metadata resource is what gives us information on each particular virus. All right, so then let's look at that briefly. It's another spreadsheet here, as you see it. And that spreadsheet also has the complete taxonomic hierarchy for every species. What you'll see here is a column that has either E in it, or in some cases it will have an A. E is meant to be the exemplar virus isolate. That's the virus isolate that defines the properties for the viruses that belong to any particular ICTV species. And so for any one of these, Sulfolobus filamentous virus 1, the exemplar, that is the exemplar virus isolate. That's the name of the virus that in this case belongs to the species called alpha lipothrix virus SFV1. And so you see here the species name is different from the virus name. That wasn't always the case, but should be almost always the case come this summer, when we move to what we're calling binomial names that have the name of the genus as the first component of the species name, and then some species epithet, that is the second component of the species name, is something that particularly identifies the species. So in this case, for this genus, we have two different species, FBFV2 and SFV1, that belong to that particular genus here, the alpha lipothrix virus. And so they're two separate, different viruses that serve as the exemplar virus for that particular species. This is a virus isolate in which we have an abbreviation for that virus isolate. There is an isolate designation frequently that's present. Most importantly, we provide the GenBank accession number and the NCBI RefSeq accession number for those virus isolates. So this is where you get down into the virus-specific information, especially here, the virus sequence information that pertains to the isolates that are exemplars for each species. Importantly, we tell whether or not the genomic sequence that's available in these GenBank accessions is a complete genomic sequence, or in this case, a coding complete genomic sequence. Not yet, it may be missing something at the 5' or 3' end of the genomic sequence. But in order to be an exemplar, that is these days, in order to actually create a new virus species, the virus isolate that is the member virus of that species has to have at least a coding complete genome available, if not a complete genome. You will see some partial genomes in the VMR. These tend to be virus exemplars that were defined before we instituted this requirement of having a complete virus genome. And then you also have information on the genome composition, and the host of that particular virus is listed here. So all of this information is provided in the VMR to provide that important link from the virus to the species, species itself. Okay. Um, ah, losing my voice here. That says it's time that I stop talking and I hand it off to someone else. So what I'm going to do now is hand it off to Donald Smith to talk to us about the virus ICTV virus report. Let's see. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So the ICTV virus report. So let me stop sharing. Okay. Donald, did you want to show your own screen or do you want me to share? Oh, that's right, you can't. I need to share for you. Sorry. Okay. So coming up on your screen now is the ICTV report presentation by Donald. Donald?
Thanks, Elliot. So Donald Smith, I'm the managing editor for the ICTV report, and just want to give a bit of history about the report. So if you could have the next slide, Elliot. The first report came out in 1971, which is just a few years after the ICTV was established. And it's that slim gray cover you can see on the right. And it was a report was produced every 3 to 5 years after that, up to the 2011 when the ninth report was produced. And that's the rather larger dark volume you can see lowering underneath the slim top one. And it's 1,300 pages, a very substantial volume, not easy to hold to read in bed, let's say. So getting to this scale of a product brought up several problems, which kind of came to a head after 2011. And really, one of the most important ones, problem is that because the ICTV is updating its taxonomy every year, producing a book which might take 2 or 3 years to put together and then publish, it's out of date. Even before it's published, it's out of date. So there's a currency problem with it. And there's also a cost. It's such there's so much information there. It's such a big volume. It was an expensive thing to produce, and it meant that it was very limited in its availability. And that's really not really doing any good. The whole point of producing this information is that to make it accessible to people. And the other point I would like to make is that it became an enormous effort for the ICTV Executive Committee to put all this information together every 3 to 5 years. So for all those reasons, the decision was taken to move to an online format. And that's what I'll talk about next, which is on the next slide, Elliot, is the online report, which is available on the ICTV website. And I'll in a minute, I will show you how to, the structure of that and how to access it. But I just want to make a few general points first. I'd say it's on the ICTV website. It's free. And so as opposed to being a book that has limited availability, it's free for anybody to access. It's really structured at the family level. So each chapter of the report deals with a particular virus family in general. And because it's online, we can update it whenever the taxonomy changes. We can then update the report chapters so that it can be as near to current as we can make it. And that the content is produced by individual ICTV study groups, and with the content edited then by the ICTV Executive Committee. And at the moment, we have about 120 chapters, which is not the full range of families described at the present, but it comprises the bulk of the well-known families. So before I go on to show you how to navigate through the report, I just want to mention another important aspect of what we've been doing, which is to provide a citation for these report chapters. We've also been publishing profiles, which are on the next slide, so these profiles are a summary, essentially, of the report, just on 2 printed pages. And they're published in the Journal of General Virology, again, as open access articles. And they act both as a convenient summary of the taxonomic situation for a family and its general characteristics, but also it means that the ICTV report itself can be cited through a particular paper. And the authors of the report then get some credit through these citations for the work that they've put into producing the report. And these profiles are updated when there's a major change to virus taxonomy. And this might be every 5 years or something of that order. A new profile would come out with a new description. So if I can switch now to sharing my screen, I will just show you the structure of the report and how to move through it. So I hope that you can see my screen now. So the report, there's a tab at the top, which is marked report. And I just want to mention...
Donald, it's not quite up there yet. There it is. Okay.
Okay. Yes, the broadband is not so good as it could be here. Right at the bottom of this report tab, there's an option to look at the 9th report. So you can, if you want to look at oh, this is okay. It's not going to do it. All right, here we go. You can look at the individual chapters from the 9th report as PDFs. So those are now available free to see. So you don't need the book anymore to check them out. But for the current report, there's an index page that you come to. And this is grouped in different ways. You can look at it by the genome or by the just an alphabetical list, or there's also an image index as well. Just should mention there's a little video if you want to help in little guide going through the report. There's a video you can watch there at the top. So the example I want to give, just scrolling through, and I want you to be impressed by the number of families that are here. As we scroll through, I thought I would give Fila Verde as an example of the how our typical report chapter is laid out. And it doesn't really matter which family I am showing, because the structure is standard, is intentionally standard for all families. So on the left-hand side, there's a sidebar, and each of these lines is a separate page within the chapter. So there's a family page, and then for each of the genera within the family, there's it has its own page, and then there's some accessory pages at the end, which I'll come back to. So each family chapter starts off the same way, some introductory information, the authors and when it was posted, for example. There's then a summary section that always includes a table just with very general features of the virus family. And there may then be some additional information below that. In this case, there's more information about hosts and particular genera. And so then there follow standard sections, which I'll just go through. There's something on the virion, on its morphology and contents, on genome organization and replication. This will often include a genome diagram to illustrate the way that open reading frames are arranged on the virus genome. Quite a few examples in this case. Here's a life cycle replication figure. Something about the biology. Derivation of names. So Elliot mentioned the higher family and above derivations of names. On this page, you'll find how the genera within the family are named, and also in some cases the species epithets that are used. It's sometimes quite interesting to know. It helps remember what they are as well, but they provide some interesting context to the family. After this, there's a section on genus demarcation, which is very important to say that this is how genera are distinguished within the family. And my scrolling is not working very well. And then there's usually a phylogenetic tree just to illustrate the relationship between different viruses in the family. And we always try and include the accession number used to create the phylogenetic tree, so that it's possible to recreate these alignment, these trees, and also extend them. So the alignment used and the tree file produced are available as resources. So on the left-hand side, you'll see on the sidebar, there's a resources section. So the files used are available there. So it means that anybody can extend or reproduce those findings. And then right at the bottom, there's a table of viruses that are thought to be in the family, but have not yet been formally classified into species. So that's sort of there as an aide-memoire, or that they're to acknowledge that these viruses exist. So if I were to go to just a genus page, you would see the same sort of things. I'm regretting doing this now. So the same structure, the virion, lots of detail about proteins, something about genome organization, biology, and then right at the bottom, a list of species within the genus. Just finish up the sidebar here. So it's important that there's a page to acknowledge the authors who do all the work in producing, putting this report together, a citation, which refers to the profile that I mentioned before, a list of references, and the resources relating to the phylogenetic tree. And the last item there is a species list for the whole family. And this derives from the VMR that Elliot was talking about before. And so it's an important resource. Now, I mentioned that 120 families are covered so far. We have, for some families, we've also been producing shorter reports, what we should call interim reports. I'll just show an example of one of these. And the idea is that some families have very few viruses in them. There's not many people studying them. It's just nice to have some content to summarize them that's available without going through the full rigmarole of a report and a profile. And this is an example of one. There's just a very short summary with characteristics of the virus, a genome diagram, and an illustration of what the taxonomy is for that particular family, which is just one genus and one species, and then a table of the species at the bottom of the page. So this is the sort of thing you might see or increasingly for some more obscure virus families. So I think that's all I want to say about the report, and I would stress that it's always work in progress. It always will be work in progress because thanks to the work of the ICTV, the taxonomy doesn't stay still. So we're always catching up, but hopefully it's becoming more and more of a useful resource that everyone can have access to. And I think I'll shut up there and stop sharing my screen.
Okay, thank you, Donald. So what we're going to do now is take a dive into the website itself, and I'm going to throw it to Dr. Steve Powell, who is a member of my group, who works a lot on providing information that make all of what you see usable. So, Steve, why don't you take the ball?
Will do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Always a good thing to check. Okay, so we've already seen the website in some detail in certain aspects. So I'm going to back up now and look at just a general overview. And so let me proceed with that. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So located at ictv.global, and let me go ahead and get on the website here. The ICTV website provides access to the current taxonomy database in an online and downloadable format and maintains a complete history of virus taxa back to the first release in 1971, as we've seen. When you first navigate to the website, you'll see a disclaimer, such as the one at the bottom of my screen here. Hopefully everyone sees that. And this is about user preferences and user statistics, which are collected by the site. The disclaimer is there because the EU mandates that the collection of personal information is to be disclosed. However, please be aware that the only personal information that the ICTV collects is that which is used to compile usage statistics. The website's homepage, as you'll see, and as you have seen, has a main menu along the top of the screen with numerous items to view, and we'll look at some of those shortly. Also, we see that there are quick links along the web page, the front of the page. Now you can access the page just as I have here as a general member, or you can sign up as a web member. To sign up as a web member, you would click the login right here in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. And the advantage of being a web member is that you're put on our mailing list for comments about the website, and also being a web member will allow you to post in the forums. So to register as a web member, you just click on login, and once you get to the next screen, create new account. And then you will need to just complete the fields that are required as indicated by the asterisks here. And then once you prove you're not a robot, you then create a new account.
Hey, Steve, can you click on accept to get rid of that disclaimer?
I am about to do that.
At the
Yes, I am certainly about to do that. Okay. So proceeding forward. Pardon me here. So as I mentioned, the main menu contains various items ranging from about the ICTV. As Marilla has pointed out, we have the charts of the ICTV, statutes, code, and organization. Also, there's membership, study groups, and recent updates to the website. There are also taxonomy resources and tools, as Elliot has spoken of, such as the taxonomy browser, which we'll hear about a little later in detail. The master species list, which Elliot has also spoken about, and the VMR, virus metadata resource, taxon name etymology, and proposals. And as Donald was speaking of, we also have the report chapters, both current report chapters as well as past report chapters, and help and information here on using the report chapters. We also have information, meeting reports, general information, meetings that are listed, upcoming or past meetings, news and newsletters, forums, general and taxonomic, and we have help as well. Now, scrolling back down to the bottom of the page, I just want to point out on the main page here that we also have an email address here for questions and additional information. And we have acknowledgements as well. And we would like to acknowledge these organizations for financial support. And we would also like to thank the ICTV Executive Committee members, study group members, and the national representatives for their support. And also would like to thank at this time Don Dempsey and Curtis Hendrickson, who will be speaking to you shortly, from the University of Alabama at Birmingham, for their work on the development of the website and the taxonomy database. Also, I should point out before we move on that there is a search window here at the bottom of the screen. And what this allows you to do, if you type in the window actually instead of elsewhere, as I was just doing then, you can do a search. The wrong thing, excuse me. Pardon me. There we go. So you get a search of the website for any terms or phrases of interest, and what you will get then is a listing either of web pages as we see here, or you can also choose images. And also we have this link for basic rules for search terms here under About Searching. So now let's return to the main menu here, and let's look at the items under help in particular. So under help, you will notice that you have frequently asked questions here. Questions such as, how do I write virus species and other taxa names? Can I translate virus names into my own language? How do I cite the ICTV virus taxonomy? And how do I submit new proposals for the new taxa? Also under help, we have various how-to videos on using the official taxonomic resources, such as the master species list. What is the ICTV master species list? There's a video on that. Using the taxonomy browser, which we will look at in detail later. How to find a virus species name. Finding a species name using the VMR. And using the ICTV report to find information about a virus. If we were to select one of these videos, such as this one here, you'll note that you can view it either directly from the web page or from YouTube. And for your convenience, we have added a video transcript at the bottom. Also under help, we have an email for additional questions. So that's basically what we have under help. And under forums, web members now, you have to be a web member to, but if you are a web member, you can post questions, either general questions about the ICTV or taxonomic questions. And if you look at them, each of the article in the forums represents a complete thread of posts. And you can also look at old forum posts under the forum archive. So for now, that's all I have to say. I'll come back to you a little bit later. So Don, if you're ready, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Don.
All right, I am ready. So let's see if I can get the PowerPoint going. Can you folks see that? I'll assume you can. Oh, hold on a sec.
Yeah, we can see it.
Great. Okay. So hi, everyone. I'm Don Dempsey. I'm a software developer working on the ICTV project. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about taxonomy browsing. It's great that we have the taxonomy, but how do you know what's in it, right? So let's see. I just want to give you a few notes here. These are common to the different ways. So there are several ways we can view the taxonomy, but overall the purpose is to visually communicate what's in it, which taxa are included, how they're related to each other, and taxon specific data. So as I mentioned, we have several different ways to view the taxonomy. The original way to view this info is the taxonomy browser, what we might call the traditional or original browser. You can find at this link. Then, and I'll give you a full walkthrough of how to use these. The next one, I'll tell you about the visual taxonomy browser, which is a little more of a modern interface. It's got some animation and some additional features that I'll show you. And last is the historical taxonomy browser, which gives you more ability to select a particular release that you want to view the taxonomy for. So let me stop sharing and I'll go to my browser. Okay, can you folks see that? I'll
Yes.
assume.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So this is the home page. And if you want to use our taxonomy browser, you would go to taxonomy browser. So I hope most of this is pretty intuitive. If any of this is not intuitive or doesn't make sense, please don't hesitate to reach out and let us know, or if you have suggestions for improvement. So at the top, you'll notice that we have some help buttons. So if you want to know more about taxonomy searching, which I'll tell you about today, you click on this and you get some info. Taxonomy browser, and you've got that. But another very helpful link here is the MSL, the spreadsheet for the current taxonomy. So if you'd like, you can download that from here. So first, before I talk about search, I'd like to actually show you the browser. And in various incarnations of this browser, you'll notice that at the top, it always tells you what release you're about to view. It has some information about when it was ratified, that kind of information about the provenance of the release. And it shows a list of all of the taxa, a count of taxa by rank below that. If you're curious, these are all in the current release. These are the counts of the different taxa. So I'd like to jump in and start clicking things. The first thing I'm going to click on is one of these things. You can call it a taxon node or a row if you'd like, but all of these have common features. First thing it shows is the taxonomic rank, followed by the taxonomic name. In this case, this is Adenoviria. So for lower level ranks, you'll note that it has the parent rank to the right. And let's see. Also, you probably saw the clicking here. Not only do you have to use the icon, because it could be small in some browsers, you can actually click anywhere on the left side of this bar, and that will expand it or collapse it. Also, you see this little guy popping up, kind of a, let's see. So this tells you a little bit of information about this particular taxon, specifically how many lower level taxa by rank. Again, now let's see, one piece of interesting information here. If you click on this where it says click for details, this will actually take you to the taxon history page, which Curtis is going to give you some a deep dive into that and explain all explain what's going on there. But as you see, you click on this and it brings up that page. Don't want to steal his thunder, so I won't talk much more about that. Let's see. The only other thing I should note is in releases prior to 2020, I believe, some of the species that you see will be indicated as a type species with a star to the left. So anything at 2020 and after, you won't see that. But prior to that point, you'll see a little star here. Okay. All right.
Don, you may also mention the updated label that's there.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Elliot. So down here, you'll see that there is a label updated, which means that this has been modified since the previous release. And you may find that, you can actually scroll through and see whether it's been recently updated. So that's another bit of information that we provide. Now that I've shown you how the browser works and what it does, I'd like to talk about the search functionality. So with search, you probably know what you're looking for, but you might not be familiar with its entire lineage or the releases in which it appeared. So that's why we provided this search ability. And for this, I am going to search on some of my favorite names. It's very creative. I'm not sure who named this, but I like it. Donkey Kong. I'm a child of the 80s, late 70s, early 80s. So Donkey Kong is very meaningful to me. So if you click on search, this will search the current taxonomy for that particular name. And as you can see, we have one result here. And at present, this is the most recent release that we have in production. And you see it highlights the actual thing you were searching for. If you click on view, it will, well, I'll show you. Click on view, and it's kind of exciting. It animates down to the, there it is. So it shows you where in the taxonomy tree that this is located. Otherwise, you would have to have known all the parents here, all the upper level ranks. So very, very helpful. You can also search by partial text. So you don't have to know the entire name as long as you know part of it. You could even do that. So also what's possibly even more helpful is this checkbox. So if you check this, not only will it search the current taxonomy, but it searches all the releases back to 1971. So let's see if that showed up. Oh, okay. Looks like it was introduced in the 2021 release, and it's still there. Yeah. So let's see. So that is the what we call the traditional taxonomy browser, or the original, the old standard.
Don,
Now,
while you're there,
yeah,
let's try one thing.
sure.
If you uncheck, so let's say we are interested in polio virus, and we don't know what its current taxonomic name happens to be. So why don't you just type in polio,
Okay,
and hit search,
okay,
and you'll see that nothing comes up. So that says there's no current taxon, specifically no current species with the name polio as part of that name. But if you then check select search across all releases, now you'll see that poliovirus, the last appearance of that name was in 2005. And Don, if you click on 6 to go all the way over to the beginning, you'll see that the first appearance of something species with the name poliovirus type 1, was 1971, which happens to be the first release of the ICTV taxonomy. But by using names that may or may not be part of taxon names currently or in the past, you can sort of drill down and find the current taxonomic name for any one of these. And as Curtis will show you in a minute, if you were to click on view, that will take you to the if you click on history, that will take you to the taxon details page that gives you the complete history of, in this case, poliovirus type 1. Okay, Don.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that, Elliot. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to show you is our visual taxonomy browser. This is something new in the last year or so, I think, that some of our collaborators in the computer science department at UAB, they put this together, and it's a really nice way to visualize these things. So if I were to look at some of the same information here, and actually I might expand it a bit, you can see that it not only does it animate, and it's a little more easier to follow this visually. But you'll notice that when I mouse over the name, it tells me the rank, it tells the number of lower level taxa by rank, and you can actually view the taxon history from here. So pretty much the same functionality as before, but it's presented in a more visually appealing way. You'll also notice that the names are lined up in columns. So we have the ranks across the top, and these are hopefully lined up with their particular rank. So let's see. Once we get to the species level, you notice this just populated. So I clicked on Azora. I'm gonna mispronounce this. Azora. I'm not even gonna try. Let's try. Let's try a different name here and see if it's easier to pronounce. Captivirus. Yes, that's a lot easier. So you see the species. You can click on that, and it'll take you to the taxon history page, which Curtis will show you later. I'm trying to build anticipation for Curtis's presentation on that. It's going to be good. So right now you'll see one thing that's you can select which release you want here from a list. So that's a little more intuitive, I guess, than the original taxonomy browser. Also, if you'd like, you can bump up the font size a bit. So there are some other features that I'll be talking about later in future updates. So remember this, and I'll come back to it. The last part, I hope I'm not talking too long, but let's see. The last part is the historical taxonomy browser. So this is kind of another view, another way to navigate. It starts off at the top here, and I did this without explaining. So it's also from the taxonomy menu option under release history. So here's every release, some brief, just a little bit of info about each release all the way back to 71.
Don,
And
can you let me explain what these releases are?
sure,
Or
great.
at least where the year and the release numbers come from. So each release, as we indicated before, is evaluated by the executive committee in the summer of each year. It's approved by the executive committee, and then it's ratified by the total ICTV membership in the spring of the next year. So when we see year 2022, we see 2022 at the top there as the year of the release. That is the year in which that set of taxa were approved in the summer by the executive committee. So 2022 is our most recent release. It was approved by the full membership, as you see there, email ratification, in March of 2023. The executive committee met this past summer of 2023, to approve what will become Master Species List, or MSL, number 39. You'll see here that the 2022 release is number 38. So every MSL has its own number, in this case, the most recent one being 38, and that was approved in the summer of 2022 by the executive committee. The next release, which was approved by the executive committee in 2023, will have a release year of 2023 and an MSL number, as I indicated, of 39. Thanks, Don.
Sure. Thank you, Elliot. Yeah. So I'll show you what happens if you're interested in, let's say, maybe the 1998 release here. Click on it, and you'll see it scroll down and show you the taxonomy browser that I showed you earlier, but this time it's specific to the 1998 release. So you'll notice that there are certain ranks that didn't exist in 1998 in that version. So yeah, so this is a different way to navigate multiple taxonomy releases. And I neglected to mention this one part. We have some extra controls here: expand ranks to show and hide ranks above. So this is potentially confusing. Let me go back to, it's a little easier to show from the taxonomy browser. So this is, if you would like for this to kind of be pre-expanded. So if you notice this list, I expand ranks to show, let's say, subfamily. So, and then hide ranks above, well, let's say order, just for grins. Actually, a good example is expand ranks to show species and hide ranks above species. If you only want to see species in this tree, this may take a while to load because there's quite a few. Yeah, so now you only see the species, and they are in alphabetical order. So that's possibly a useful tool here, depending on your needs. Let's see. Okay, so that's all I wanted to show you. Those are 3 different ways that you can view the taxonomy, and I will be coming back a little later on to tell you more about our future plans for these releases.
Don, on the visual taxonomy browser, I know some people use that to create figures. Is there a good trick for exporting the figures from that browser?
There is, actually. So we have a new, and I'll tell more about this later, but we have a new feature coming up that our new developer, Logan Mims, is working on. He's kind of finalizing this. There will be an easy way to export what you see as an image, like a PNG, something like that, or a PDF. So yes, so they're coming soon is a nice way to export this display.
All right, so now we're gonna pass it on to Curtis, who's gonna provide more information about the history of taxa that we provide through the website. Curtis, you're muted right now.
Yep, coming online here. And this, well, people have been asking some questions about, how things change over time in the question and answer. So I'll try and answer that. So I'm going to go back to the taxonomy browser that Don indicated, and I'm doing one of those searches where I search across all historic releases. I picked this particular virus because I know it's changed over time. And so, as we saw earlier, you see the name appear in some years and not in other years. Specifically, it doesn't appear in 2022. Now, if we go into history, that will jump us over to this page here. And that will focus on just this one taxon and how it has changed over time. And this is really the meat of the transparency here in terms of seeing how the proposals have changed things over time. It starts out telling you the year that you clicked on. So I clicked on the 2021 link. And you come down here, and there's going to be a blue bar for each year where something has changed. So in 2022, it was renamed, and this shows you both its new name, and it gives you a link to the proposal that requested and justified that name change. So you can click on that. It will download a zip file that contains both the Word document that gives you the text description and the phylogeny and all that, as well as the Excel file that very concisely specifies what the changes are. If you're in the process of preparing a proposal, these two links are here to help you as well. This one will copy this lineage into the exact format needed to paste into a proposal spreadsheet. So it makes it easier to enter things into the proposal spreadsheet without having to retype all this stuff by hand and possibly introducing typos. So you can just copy that, and then you can paste that into Excel or into another file to refer to this. So as we scroll down here, we see that this one was renamed. Don had mentioned the stars for the type species. Certain species used to be designated as the type or representative species of their genus. And so there was a lot of tracking of that. And then one of the other things that can happen is it can be moved. So the name didn't change, but something changed in terms of its upper rank taxa. Either it moved to a different genus, or potentially a subfamily was added, or a family or some other thing was renamed. In this particular case, it was the addition of additional higher rank taxa that didn't actually change what genus it was in, but changed how that genus was classified. And so you can scroll back and see the whole history back to when that species was first accepted or proposed and accepted. So that's a pretty simple linear example where it's just been moved and renamed a few times. One of the other, let's see, poliovirus was another example that we did where it disappeared in 2005. So when we go to see the history on that one, the question is, well, why doesn't it show up after 2005? Now, this one is a little bit more complicated. It currently is called enterovirus C, enterovirus C, pardon the pronunciation. But this history was a little bit more complicated in that when we go all the way back, we had poliovirus type 1, but then several other human poliovirus species were added in, quite a few of them. So you see that those were all created in 1979. And then they were merged back down to just two species, poliovirus and human enterovirus C. So you see this merge. Now, one thing you can't see from this is which of these species were merged into each one. That is, of course, covered in the report itself, outlining that. And then those two species were merged again in 2008 to create human enterovirus C. So this is the way that we provide for seeing how things have changed over time. And just to outline the types of changes you can see, can everybody see that slide that has tracking name changes now?
Yes.
So these are this is the very short list of changes that are allowed. You can create a new species or genus or family. You can rename one. You can move it, meaning that a species moves to a different genus or a genus to a different family. They can be abolished. Historically, they were designated type species or undesignated. In certain instances, genera can be promoted to families, things like that. Equally, they can be demoted. So this is all nice linear name changes. And then you have these merges, like I just showed you with poliovirus, where several different species can be merged into one species. You also get splits where a genus gets split into multiple genera. So some of these are a little bit more complicated. We're certainly open to suggestions as to how to better represent that complexity in this somewhat linear history diagram. The database behind it actually knows which things were merged into which things or split from which things. But visually presenting that can be confusing. So if we look at example of bovine enterovirus, we can see that this one, as I scroll down, started out as one species here. It was then split into two different species, and then they got merged back together again into one species. And then cafeteria virus, which is one of the big related to the Mimi viruses, that one got abolished. Let's see. Nope, sorry. It's not a good example of that. Oh yeah, virus was the other example. So this one got promoted. This is a case of going from a genus up to a family, which has a required name change since every taxonomic rank has a specific suffix that is required. And I think that's pretty much the summary of these history pages. So I will hand the microphone back to.
So thanks, Curtis. I'll take it briefly. And what we're going to do now is have Steve take over again. And Steve is just going to provide a little bit more detail. We aren't going to spend a lot of time on this, but we showed you some of the other information, at least briefly through the menus that is available. So Steve was just going to provide a little bit more detail on the type of information that's available from the ICTV website. Steve?
Okay, thank you. I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, can everybody hear me and can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So one thing I wanted to back up really quickly, I realized in my previous talk that I'd neglected to mention how the organization is on the quick links on the main screen, which you've already seen through the process of the other presenters today. But we have the official taxonomic resources, of course, which has been discussed in detail, the taxonomy browser, the master species list, and the virus metadata resource provided as quick links. And we have news items. Those can be, recent as well as current, and even are archived back to past years, which you can look at if you were to click View All News. I won't do that here. And there are other useful resources, quick links to them as well. And all of these quick links, of course, every item that you can get to right here directly through the quick link is provided under the main menu at the top of the screen as well. But these items are provided here because they're very frequently used, and they're things that you would potentially like to get at quickly and without having to search through the main menu. Okay, so next thing I wanted to talk about, as Elliot mentioned, under information, you can access news, current, recent, and archive, just as I showed on the main page there. So if we were going to click on here, you see that you have exactly the same thing we just saw under the quick links. These are starting out with the most recent news, and as you go back, you get past news. And if you go all the way down, you can see where the news has been archived according to year. And it looks like we have them back to 2016. Okay, so the other thing is, besides the news, is we have newsletters. And in the newsletters, these are provided as PDF files. And these are available all the way back to the year 2003. Just show you what that looks like. Also, under information, besides news and newsletters, we have various meeting reports. We have documents such as those found under the general information. And if we look at that, it basically just gives you an idea of the kind of things that the ICTV does. So you can look at these documents and they're, gives you just an overview of what the ICTV does.
And Steve, I would point
Yes.
out there, if you look third from the bottom, the agenda for this webinar is provided. And
Yes.
I will also provide from this this folder here the list of the presentation. So all of the slides that people have presented, I'll provide that as a PDF file from this link here. We'll also add it to the news item link, so it'll be obvious where it comes from.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yes. So general information, we also have under information, we have meetings, and these are postings of meetings that either are ICTV sponsored or those that have a significant taxonomy component in which an ICTV member participated. We also have, under information, we have study group info. And the content available from the links found under study group info provide information on the indicated virus family or genus. And this content is maintained by the relevant study groups. For example, if we were to look at the Flaviviridae study group, oops.
That's it.
Oh, okay. We can see that we have information on the various genotypes.
Of hepatitis C, which is
Of hepatitis C. Thank you so much. And there's other types of info as well as you look at the various study groups that can vary. Unless Elliot wants to go through those, that's basically all I had under the information.
No, that's great.
Okay.
Thanks, Steve.
You're welcome.
So we've shown you a lot in terms of what we have available now. We do want to have future webinars in which we talk in more detail about various aspects of the information and tools that we make available. But we aren't just sitting here giving ourselves applause for what you're seeing. We have an active development ongoing in order to add new resources. And so our developers, Don Dempsey, Logan Mims, a new member of our development team, as well as Curtis, are providing new tools to provide information in different ways or to provide additional information, all of which will be available through the website. So now I just wanted to give Don and Curtis an opportunity to talk about the few tools that we have almost ready to go. So let's start off with Don.
Thanks, Elliot. Let me show you my very brief PowerPoint here. Let's see. And there it is. Let's see. Okay. Future plans coming soon. Hopefully very soon. Actually, let me make this a play. Okay. So these are the three future plans that Logan and I are involved in. The first one is something that's actually close to being finalized, I think, and that is some enhancements to the visual taxonomy browser. One thing that we're adding to that is the search functionality that is currently in our taxonomy browser. So you'll be able to search just like you can in the taxonomy browser, see the search results potentially from multiple releases. And then when you select it, it will expand the tree, the visual tree, and show you what you clicked on. So that's something to look forward to soon. Also, as Curtis mentioned earlier, we are adding a way to export the display as either an image or a PDF. So I know that's going to be helpful for presentations, proposals. I don't know, whatever, however you find it interesting, it'll be there. So the second future plan is something I'm really excited about. Virus name lookup. So with the current version of the website, you have to know at least part of the official name that you're searching for. So for example, if you search for variola, it'll return results for variola virus. But what about smallpox? Smallpox is the name of the disease caused by variola virus, but also quite a few people refer to it as smallpox virus. They refer to variola as that. So, what we're adding to handle those kind of cases is the virus name lookup. We're bringing in some more databases to search. So right now, when we search for taxonomy, search for taxa, it's just our ICTV database, but we're also bringing in NCBI taxonomy, which will include things like acronyms, abbreviations, common names, synonyms, that kind of thing. It's hundreds of thousands of, at least hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of virus records to extend that. We're also going to include our VMR, our virus metadata resource, and I am also looking into other options. For example, bioportal ontologies also have some interesting data. And if you will, if anyone is aware of any online source that we could use that might be helpful for that, I would appreciate any ideas you have. So the third future plan that I'm involved with is an API, a web application programming interface. So we realized that we're maintaining a lot of data behind the scenes that can be useful to a lot of people, but there really isn't a good way for people to access it other than seeing what's on the website. And there's a lot more behind the scenes than you can see. So our solution for that is to create an API. What this means is it's a way for software applications or scripts to easily incorporate the ICTV data and tools into another program or script. So this is for programmers, or if you have scripting skills or programming skills, you could actually use our data, use custom views of our data, maybe taxonomy data, or there's a lot to be included there. We already have a very simple web API, and that's what's used to populate the website for certain pages, like the taxonomy browsers. There is a very simple web API there, but our plan is to extend that quite a bit, and it's going to be publicly available. We might have users register, but of course, there's no cost or anything like that. It's going to be let's see. Yeah, I think so it's just essentially it's going to be a way to bring ICTV data and tools into your application, if that's something you would be interested in.
All right.
And yeah,
Thanks, Don.
sure.
And then Curtis is going to talk about sort of what I call a companion to the virus lookup application, in which we're calling a sequence lookup application.
Yep. So as has been commented in some of the Q&A, there's a lot of information in the viral metadata resource that links the taxonomic species designations and the taxonomy to the actual virus names and even the accession numbers to access the sequence for those viruses. So given that we have this well-curated resource of vetted taxonomy and connected to sequence, it would seem very useful to make that available as a sequence-based search tool. So we're going to provide a public tool that allows you to upload a novel sequence and then have that compared against the exemplar strains and viruses, and get back a taxonomy for that. So that's a tool under development that should be coming out soon. I see there's been several discussions on the Q&A of people who are also working in a similar space. So it looks like there's a lot of room for collaboration there as well.
And I want to emphasize one thing about this application, Curtis, is that this will not be an application to classify a virus, a new virus. What it will do is allow you to determine what exemplar sequence your new viral sequence is most closely related to. That doesn't say anything about whether or not your new sequence might necessarily belong in an existing species or a new species or a new genus. It will just tell you, based on a simple blast search of all of the exemplar genomic sequences, whether or not your sequence is currently closely related to an existing species. Lots of other groups and individuals are working on new tools to actually classify the viruses, that is, determine the appropriate taxonomic classification, new or existing, for new viruses. And that's not what we're trying to do here. It's a simple lookup to show you what closely resembles a virus that you might have newly isolated.
Yep, this tool is not aware of demarcation criteria or what the required percent threshold is for a new species within any specific genera or anything like that.
Right. Okay, thanks, Curtis. Let's stop all of our sharing there. Now, what I'm going to do is put up the web page and start to take some of your questions. So I'm not going to do this verbally through the webinar, but everybody's been submitting questions through the Q&A screen. So I'm just kind of scroll through these. If you have additional questions, please add them to the Q&A. But I'm just going to pick out a few now that might be of interest to everybody that's attending the webinar. So one question is, the originally discovered sequence virus isn't always the exemplar, is it? And the answer to that is yes, it is not always the exemplar. That is, the exemplar for any particular species is generally chosen by the study group that represents the family to which that species belongs. So the study group will look at all of the viruses that belong to a particular species and ask the question, which one of those viruses is the best exemplar of the species? It could be the virus that was originally discovered, that is the first virus discovered as a member of that species, or it could be a virus that's been studied a lot more. So it's not always the case that the first virus discovered is the one that has had the most laboratory work done on it. So a study group might determine that another virus is a better representative of the species because there's a lot more information on that virus than any others. There are a ton of virus names that are the same as the species name still. So that question really relates to the current requirement of the ICTV that species names be in the form of binomial names, starting with the genus and ending with a separate word component that the proposal determines. And we are still in the process of renaming all existing species to conform to the binomial name. So not all species have yet been named, and therefore the names that you see frequently may be, especially for plant viruses, the name of the virus itself. But by this summer, I would say close to 90, maybe 95% of all species names will be in the binomial format, and therefore you'll be able to easily distinguish the species name, that is the binomial name of the species, from the virus name itself. Someone asked about the percent similarity in nucleotide sequences that determines a new plant virus species. That information is provided by the demarcation criteria that exist for every virus family and for every virus genus. That is, the percent similarity of nucleotide sequence that might determine a new species varies from one family to another, from one genus to another. And so you have to, if you've isolated a new virus and you want to know what the demarcation criteria are that determine whether or not you have a new species, you need to find those demarcation criteria. Those criteria are present in the proposals. So any proposal is supposed to list the demarcation criteria that was used in order to inform the new taxa that were recommended in that proposal. The demarcation criteria are also provided in many of the virus report chapters. And so you can look in there. One of the things that we're doing for the future, one of the aspects of the work that Steve is working on, is to catalog all the demarcation criteria and provide it within a structured database that we make available on the website. That's a long-term project. I don't want to estimate when that's going to be available, but it is something that we're working on now. Oh, let's see here. Let me scroll down. So someone asked about how do you make the connection between an old name of a taxa, let's say an old species name, and a new name that's been updated in the most recent release. So as an example, again, almost every old name of every virus that existed in the ICTV database has been updated to make a new binomial name. In order to make that connection by names, all you have to do is look in the master species list. So the master species list contains a separate tab, a separate place that shows that transition between names. Let me see if I can bring that up really quick and share that for you. Okay. And what I'm going to do is reshare. Oops. Okay, where are you, master species list? Here we go. So here's the master species list here. Down at the bottom, hopefully all of you can see that. Down at the bottom is a link called Taxa Renamed in MSL 38. And in the next release, we'll also expand this to give all current renames. But this just shows you all old names and then new names here. You'll see here, this one happens to be the family herpes viridae was renamed to ortho herpes viridae. And then you have additional new families that came on board. But if we scroll down here, you'll see there are a lot of species names. So the species name Gallid alpha herpes virus 1, that may be hard to see. Let me expand it here. So the old name was Gallid alpha herpes virus 1. Then if you look in the next column, you'll see the new name of that virus is Gallid alpha 1. So sorry, Itovirus, which is the name of the species. Gallid alpha 1 is the new name of that. So that tab in the MSL provides you the ability to map old names to new names. Okay. Did I hear someone? No? Okay. Let me scroll down to see if there have been any questions just recently submitted. Okay, here's a comment. Acronyms or abbreviations are not unique. And yes, that's true. So if you look in the virus metadata resource, the VMR, we list abbreviations for the virus names. The ICTV, when we create a species name, that species name has to be unique. That name cannot currently exist. Of course, that would cause a lot of confusion, but that new name can't exist in any past history of the ICTV taxonomy. So every species name exists. The ICTV has direct control over those species names. So we can ensure that that species name is unique. Virus names, that is the names that you frequently see in publications or the names that you see associated with GenBank sequence records, the ICTV has no control over virus names themselves. We also really have no control over the abbreviations that are used. You can imagine with a 3-letter or 4-letter abbreviation, it's hard to keep every one of those unique. So we make no attempt at ensuring that a virus name is unique or that the abbreviation of a virus name is also unique. That unfortunately is just the way it is. Let's see. There's a question regarding the use of machine learning and AI algorithms to help support what we're doing. It is something we'd like to introduce, especially, for example, when I talked about creating that database of demarcation criteria. Demarcation criteria, being that they exist in any number of different places, it's a lot of effort to sort of consolidate that. So one thing we're looking at is whether or not machine learning approaches might help us consolidate demarcation criteria into a single database. There are lots of other questions here. What we'll do is we'll post answers to most of these questions on the website. We'll provide another file with the questions and the answers. Does anybody else in the group here see any questions that it might be good to answer verbally?
Someone had a question about phylogenetic trees. Would it be reasonable to direct them to BVBRC, or is that something we're considering adding in the future?
So this is in terms of creating a phylogenetic tree?
Yeah, I think so. Let me see if I can find the specific question.
So what I'll say is that, in essence, I think most, if not all, ICTV report chapters, when you look at the family section of that chapter, as Donald showed, will have a phylogenetic tree associated with it. And then if you look at that resources tab, the tree file itself, as well as the multiple sequence alignment that was used to generate that tree, are available. So if you have, let's say, a new species that you've just, or a virus that you think is a new species, and you want to add it to that tree to see how well, at least based upon the phylogeny that's being shown, how well your new virus is distinguished from other viruses that exist in currently existing species, you can download that multiple sequence alignment. And then there's certainly third-party tools. There are any number of tools that will allow you to align your new sequence to all the genomic sequences already present in the multiple sequence alignment, and then generate that tree. The methods used for either doing the multiple sequence alignments or generating the phylogenetic tree is beyond the charge of what we do on the website. But certainly when you're creating the ICTV report chapters, the study groups that create those chapters work directly with Donald Smith to create those trees. So Donald certainly helps out with the creation of the alignments in the trees when putting the report chapters together. Don just mentioned a resource called the BVBRC, that is the Bacterial Viral Bioinformatic Resource Centers. That's another project that we're involved in. The website is bv-brc.org. That site has a number of different online tools, including tools for generating multiple sequence alignments and phylogenetic trees that people could utilize in order to generate these things themselves.
Yeah, I think the question Don was referring to is from John Hammond, and specifically asked, is there a recommendation for best practices for sequence alignment and phylogenetic tree construction for these things?
And Donald can help with that. So when we prepare the report chapters, we do have recommendations for best approaches to generate those trees that are shown. You can download, actually, I can show where those are. Let me show you my browser again. There we go. So if you go to the report link from the menu and go to the report templates right here, that gives you the templates for preparing the report. Again, usually those are used by study groups to prepare the reports, but it does have instructions. It has author instructions here. And if you look at author instructions and open that file, that will show you the recommendations that we use for generating the MSAs and the phylogenetic trees. So those might be very useful. Okay, let me look back. It looks
There
like
was one other one I wanted to point out. Nasser Porcelavanti asks, it would be nice to have an updated page for demarcations and criteria for novel virus discovery, at least the most important criteria like similarity or profile homology at the species, genus, or any other rank. So,
And I
and if you wanted to discuss demarcation criteria.
Yeah, well, that's what I mentioned when I was talking about the work that Steve is doing. Steve is collecting those demarcation criteria, and we will be making those available in some form. It's hard. We just don't want to provide, for example, a percent similarity that's used to distinguish viruses in one species from another species, because almost always a single criteria is not the sole basis for determining the difference between viruses in one species and another species. There are multiple criteria. So to be as thorough as possible and as accurate as possible, you really want to provide the complete set of criteria that are available. And so that's why we're spending a lot of time to consolidate those. We also, one thing I didn't mention that we're looking to provide is a new page and maybe a new spreadsheet that will list additional properties of the viruses. So as all virologists know, every virus is not just a sequence. It's the phenotype that's derived from that sequence. So information about the capsid structure of the virus, whether or not it has an envelope, what the size of the genome happens to be, what the size of the virus happens to be. All of that is information that sort of is available and buried in different report chapters, but we're also consolidating that. That's one of the projects that Stuart Seidel is working on. And so that's something that we hope to provide in the next number of months as we continue the effort to extend the resources that we have. Looking at some of these other Q&A questions that are here. So here's a question about preparing proposals, and it's asking, it's important to download from GenBank a non-redundant set of viral sequences related to the sequence to be classified, but that can be difficult. So what I would say is, in terms of the ICTV resources, the list of exemplar and associated sequences, that is the E and the A sequences that are present in the VMR, can help do that. Let me just bring up the VMR again. Okay, and reshare. Okay, so again, as I mentioned, if you look in the VMR, we have these isolates that are labeled E. Let me scroll down until we see some A's. So here's some A's here. So tomato leaf curl virus has at least, every species, if there's a sequence associated with that virus, has an exemplar and E sequence. Tomato leaf curl virus has 4 additional sequences from 4 additional virus isolates that are associated with that. And so you see here, they're all called tomato leaf curl virus, but they do have different isolate designations, as you see here. Then in addition, they all have different accession numbers. So you can copy these accession numbers from this column here and use that to download those sequences, create, in this case, a small multiple sequence alignment, and use that for comparing against any new viral sequence you happen to have isolated. We now have made available, well, we haven't yet made it available, but we have written a parser that will parse the whole VMR actually, but will also parse the GenBank accession records here, and it will automatically download all of the genomic sequences associated with each one of these accession numbers. This is a project that Curtis has been working on. That is something that we could make available, the ability to download parts of sequence, some of the sequences. So you might say, let's search for everything in the genus begamovirus? And can you download for us all of the exemplars and associated sequence records for all viruses that are a member of a species of the begamoviruses? So that's also something we could add in the future as we take what Curtis has already developed and make that a little bit more useful, and also create a web-based version of that. Okay, so we're getting within 5 minutes of the end time of this webinar. As I indicated, we will be answering additional questions that have appeared and make those available on the website. I don't know if there's anything anybody else would like to add before we leave. Murillo, as the ICTV president, would you like to close us out?
I can do that. Well, first of all, I want to congratulate you, Elliot, and your whole team for organizing this. It was very well structured, very well presented. I didn't think I would stay to the end, but it was so interesting that, you know, I guess everybody really learned a lot today. Really, congratulations to everyone. And I want to thank everybody who attended, who asked questions. I hope it was informative and useful. I'm pretty sure it was, but but just don't assume. There will be other events in the future. Please keep your eye on the website now that you know how to use it, navigate it really well. And have a good day, everybody. Again, thank you, Elliot. Thank you.
Thanks, Morello. And yes, please send us suggestions for what you would like to see in future webinars, and just send those suggestions to info@ictv.global. Okay, I want to thank everybody and tell everybody have a great rest of your day or evening or whatever time it happens to be wherever you are. Bye.